Okay, let's take a look at some essential CSS for text styling. Styling text is one of the most frequent tasks of the web designer as it relates to photography. So let's get some sample text onto the CodePen so we can explore some different things that you can do to make your text look the way you want it to. I'm using the P tag. I'm also going to show you how to use the div tag. And how to use the span tag. These are some of the most common ways to style text is by assigning the CSS properties to the tag that is holding that text. All right. I'm going to do everything in this demonstration using this style attribute, the HTML style attribute, as opposed to using the CSS panel down here, just to keep things very simple for this demo. So when I say style as an HTML attribute, set up equals and put my quote marks in, I can add any number of styles for text. And one of the first ones that we're all interested in is color. Color can be expressed in a number of different ways. For text, I can use the HTML color name, and there's a certain number of those. I can also use the hex code. It will look something like this. Maybe I'll make it a different color. I can also use a different color scale called RGB, which might look something like this. I'll change that color too. Anyway, I don't want to get into all the different ways of describing color in this demo. We'll do that in another demo. But just know that you can use the color property to express color. For starters, you might be using the color name or the hex code. There are 2 or 3 others in addition that are really useful. Okay. So I'm going to set this text to be a specific size. And I'm going to do that with the font size property. The default font size for any document is expressed as 1em, EM. That's a unit of measure that's based on an old typographical principle of the M, which based a unit of measure for that type as the width of the capital M. It's a real, it's back in the days when type was set in blocks for work on a press. We're in the digital age now. We don't have blocks, we have digital files with fonts, but we still have the M unit of measure. The other default type size unit of measure is the pixel, and it's expressed like this: number and px. So it just so happens that 16 pixels and 1em are, you guessed it, the same size. Now, the reason why we have two systems is because, we can do different things with different systems. For instance, if I copy these two lines and say I want to express a fraction, so I'm going to set this font size to 1.5 em and this font size to 16.5 pixels. Look what happens. So even though 1 em and 16 pixels are the same size, 1.5 em and 16.5 pixels are definitely not the same size. It's because the em unit of measure is a relative size, and it is based on the, it's scalable. So 1.5 is half, 150% the size of 1 em. Let me say that. And 16.5 pixels is just 16.5 pixels. So let me put these three in here. And we'll do 1, 1.5, and 2. And maybe I'll put these three in a div. Okay. Oops. Okay, so you can see here, here's my default 1 em. When I go to 2 em, from 1 to 2, I've doubled the type size. So 1.5 is halfway between doubling. That's what I was trying to demonstrate. So just because both of these numbering systems, the em and the pixel, can support fractions, those fractions, they relate to a completely different way of determining size. Explore both systems. The em is quite useful because it's based on the document size, and that document size often is based on the user's device. So if you're designing with ems, you're designing in a relative proportional way, and you'll be designing in a way that is paying attention to how the user might be seeing your layouts on their screen. Okay. The next property we want to check out is the font family property. Font family is the property we use when we want to change the typeface. So if I say the font family should be Courier, I now have this text in Courier. So any font that you want to use, you can use the name, place it right here as the value of font family, and it will set that text, that font. Something else that you can do, whoops, is set up a first choice and then set up a fallback. And here's what that would look like. Here, in this example, I've set font family to be Avenir. Then I use a comma and a space, and then I say Arial. And what this is saying is that it's saying to any browser that picks up this page, try to load Avenir as the font for this tag. And if you can't find Avenir, then use Arial. So there are options that are available to you when you're designing fonts. And this is important because sometimes not everyone will have the font that you're using to design. You have to keep that in mind too. And this list is infinite. You can keep on. I'm going to do this. So here's a long list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 font declarations. The thinking would be, as a designer, I want to have my first choice declared first, and then get all my substitutes lined up in order of preference. So if somebody doesn't have all 4 of these, then we can just bump default to a generic sans serif font. So this is something very important and very useful with the font family. And generally you want to have a plan to either make sure that your fonts are going to show up on the user's device or to have some options in case your first choice doesn't show up. All right. Let's talk about bolding. This text should be bold. This text should be italic. And this text should be underlined. So oftentimes we want to do some kind of highlighting. In fact, let's do this. This text should be highlighted. So there are a number of ways we can highlight text. We can bold, we can italicize, we can underline, or we can highlight or put a background color. It used to be in the old version of HTML, we could use the B tag, the I tag, and the U tag. Oops. This is a bit historical here. You see that the text is bold, italic, and underlined using the B tag, the I tag, and the U tag. These tags still work, but for various reasons we don't really use them today. These days, I'm going to show you what we use instead. So take this tag out. You should get in the habit of using font weight for bolding. And you can just say bold for now. But there are actually a lot of different ways for us to invoke a weight. And the reason for moving away from the B tag and moving to font weight bold is that CSS allows us to access a lot of different variations of type. And so instead of there just being regular type and italics and underline and bold, which aren't really different versions of the type, they're just different ways to decorate the type, we can access different versions of the type. So there might be a thin version or an ultra thin version or a semi-bold version or a bold version or a very bold version. If you're familiar with graphic design, that's one thing we love about type, is that they often get designed in various weights. And with CSS, we can access those weights. So the font weight property is available to you in CSS, but the font weight type of declaration is not possible through HTML. So font weight is the property to use. Bold is the value to set for now. We will learn more about accessing those weights. Italics. So we have, for italics, a property called font style. You can see here in the output that the outcome between using the CSS font family or the old HTML tag is the same, right? So on some level, there's no difference in what you get, but by using CSS, you open the door to being able to use the CSS property for a lot of other things in addition. All right, so this is CSS text underlined. To underline text, we can use text decoration underline. Okay. So highlighting. Here's what we're going to do with highlighting. We can set a background color to yellow, for instance, since we're all familiar with a yellow highlighter. We're using this background color property, and it's what I used up here to block out these three as a group. Here's the paragraph text set to background color yellow. It highlights the text, but as you can see, it highlights a lot more than the text. It highlights all this white space over to the right of the text. So the effect is kind of cool because it reminds me of the yellow highlighter, but I don't like the fact that it goes all the way out here. Well, the reason why it's going all the way out here is because the style for this yellow background color is being applied to the P tag. And to solve this issue, I'll make a copy here, and I'm going to reset the tag as a div, and also reset the tag as a span. So we can see the three versions of HTML tag that we're exploring today as containers for text. All right. This text in a P tag. All right. So if we take a look at these three versions of text, you can see that the text in the P tag and the text in the div tag are getting highlighted from edge to edge of the browser screen of the web page. However, the text in the span tag is highlighting the way we would think that we might highlight text, just from the start of first word to the last word. Well, this is a way to understand what these HTML tags are doing. The P tag is reserving space in the layout for this whole block, even if that block doesn't get filled. Same with the div. The div tag is taking up space in the layout for the whole block from edge to edge, whereas the span tag is only taking up space that is defined by the text in it. So this is one way to understand the difference, mainly between the div tag and the span tag. We will use the div tag and the span tag in our web design layouts to reserve space for a certain part of our design. And the div tag is paying attention to the space that it is in, and the span tag is paying attention to what is in it. That's the main way to understand the difference between the div and the span. So anyway, to highlight some text, let's use the span tag. I can put the span tag in a p tag, for instance, and I can build a whole sentence in the p tag, or a whole paragraph. So, got my p tag. And here's what it looks like when I've got a whole paragraph of text and only some of it is highlighted. I've done that using the span tag. On this matter of having a lot of text, let's create a big paragraph here. So here's a paragraph, and there's a lot of text here. And a lot of times what we do in web design is we try to come up with designs that make text not look so dense or be more readable. So I'm going to put this in a div just so we can focus on this piece of text. Put some padding around it and put a gap in front behind it. So here's my text. And this might be, you know, a way we would approach presenting some text, long text on a page, especially if we're creating an article. Let's do this. It's three paragraph article. Okay. Lots of text, right? So when we have long text, something that often happens is, of course, we can set the size. Maybe I'll set this to something a little bit bigger to make it more readable, 1.2 M. All right. So the text is a little bit bigger, and I think it might be a little bit more readable, but look how crowded it's getting between lines. Man, it's really crowded. It's like they're sitting right on top of each other. These letters are like sardines. One thing I can do is use something called line height. Line height is a way to set the space between lines differently from the font size. Differently and independently. So here the font size is 1.2. The line height I've set to 1.4. I'm using the M unit of measure. Look what happens here. I've introduced some space in between lines. So there's more space. It's a little bit more approachable visually, and it's going to be easier to read, especially for the person who commits to reading the words. As they move from word to word, they're not going to be as crowded out by tight line spacing. Let me copy this. And let's put some headers in here. we're going to explore text alignment. Right now, all this text is flush left. It's lining up to the left. Well, we can change that. We'll do it on the paragraph level. We use the property text align. So text align left is being explicit about what's happening already. But on the second paragraph, I'll set text align to right. And let's see what happens. Where am I? Oh, here I am. Here's text align right. I can also center text. So check out the difference between text align left, text align right, and text align center. Very easy to set. There's one more. Text align justify. And you can see text align justify creates a block of text where the space in between letters is filled up so that this text block touches the left and right sides. So these are some essential text styling techniques you can use through CSS. Let me just label these. Okay, let's review. We've explored how to set the text color. We've explored how to set the text size. We've explored how to define the font display of some text using this fallback method. We've explored various ways of decorating the text. Weight, italic, underline, and highlighting. We've looked at line spacing, and we've looked at line alignment. There's a lot more that you can do with text, but this is a great basic start, a great essentials checklist. If you are comfortable with doing all of these things, then pretty much any web design challenge you take on, you will have very good control of how to make the text look exactly the way you need it to look for that design to be successful. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope you have fun learning about web typography.